Welcome into Film Tank, the weekly podcast that covers both new and classic cinema. On this bonus episode of Film Tank, myself and Nick Cheney discuss the new Gaspar Noé film, which is Climax. If you would like to get in touch with Film Tank, you can always email us at filmtankshow@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Film Tank Show. And you can listen to all of our episodes on our website, filmtankshow.com, or on iTunes. And now, here are your hosts, Nick Cheney, Toussaint Egan, and myself, Alex Diekman. Hey there, everybody! Welcome back into Film Tank, and as we've done some in the past, but not as much frequently, but today we are going to be doing a bonus episode, just myself and Nick. This has routinely been where our bonus episodes have ended up.
Yeah.
Talking about random offbeat films that just me and you have gotten together and chatted about.
True.
So, and also, too, he's claimed that he's not going to say anything, but we are recording this the same session that we recorded the Captain Marvel episode. So our friend Dan, who happens to be here but has not seen the film,
True.
claims he will not be adding anything, but we're going to see about that.
If you hear another voice, that's who it is.
That may be Dan Brooks joining in, just putting that out there. It could happen.
You never know.
So, we just wanted to chat a little bit about this particular film, mostly because, first of all, I have never seen a Gaspar Noé film before.
Neither had
Nick,
I, actually.
You had not, and now you've seen this, and the film he's probably most known for, which is a film called Irreversible.
Correct.
Which,
you watched that one?
I did.
Which is known famously for and I've never seen it, but apparently an extraordinarily awful rape scene.
A 10-minute unbroken long take of a very brutal and quote-unquote realistic rape scene, yes.
Yeah. So we won't necessarily get much into that, but it probably, you can't really think about, if you don't know anything about Gaspar Noé, that's probably the first thing that comes to most people's minds, I would guess.
Yeah.
So this film that we are actually discussing, which is out in a limited capacity in theaters right now and probably won't be really anywhere that mainstream audiences could see it. Although
that'd be fun.
And not that mainstream audiences will watch this as it'll be on HBO, because it probably won't be, but this is a film that seems like it's got a shot to be in something like the Criterion Collection or something like that.
I can see that.
I don't know if it will be.
It's definitely for people who are seeking it out only.
Could be.
You know.
Yeah, so Gaspar Noé is definitely somewhat in the provocateur type filmmaker, as somebody like we've spent time talking about previously. Why am I dropping
Lars
von Trier?
Yes. Yeah.
Very much making these kind of films, or the film Salo, which Nick, you brought up many times.
Pier Paolo Pasolini. It's kind of what people call transgressive cinema. Cinema that is in some ways made, I wouldn't say solely, but primarily to shock.
Yeah.
I think Noé and...
Who's this?
Where is the voice coming from? But also Martyrs and
yes.
High Tension. They're all
Yes.
referred to as being part of... One critic called it the new French
Extremity, yes.
And so in a way, it's part of that. It is striking how many French filmmakers in the same small period of time made these like extremely extreme films.
Yes,
you know?
I would agree. And actually, Martyrs is a great example, and I fucking love that movie.
It's true. You told me, you actually got me almost convinced to watch it, and I was
should.
not planning on it. But I may someday.
You should.
So this film centers around French dancers who gather in a remote, empty school to rehearse on a wintry night. However, the all-night celebration of the end of their gathering morphs into a hallucinatory nightmare when they learn that their sangria has been laced with LSD.
Blah, blah, blah.
That's a bummer. So the cast of this film is actually very large. I think there's about roughly 25 to 30 performers, and really they get very, it varies a little bit, but there is really equal screen time between all of the performers
That was
here.
pretty impressive.
I agree.
Yeah.
However, there is one actor in here who most people probably have heard of, and that is Sofia Boutella, who plays the main character in this film. Her character's name is Selva.
Yep.
You would know her as the girl who's missing the bottom halves of her legs from the first Kingsman, but she's been picking up in other things. She played the main mummy in the terrible Tom Cruise Mummy film. And probably her best performance was in...
Cara Delevingne. Or is she in that movie?
Cara Delevingne was the one in Suicide Squad who was...
that could be.
Well, I remember she was in that.
Oh, I thought you were just thinking... I'm
sorry.
sorry.
No. But sorry.
But Sofia Boutella's best performances probably have come more recently as she plays... an interesting character in Star Trek Beyond.
Yep.
Fantastic makeup done with her in
She's
that
the
film.
white alien,
Yep.
right? I don't mean white. I mean, like, pale white.
Literally what she looks
Like
like
Jim
because he's
Gaffigan
painted
pale.
white.
Yes.
And I actually really enjoyed her performance in Atomic Blonde,
Yeah.
too. She had a nice supporting role to play off of Charlize Theron a little bit in that
Yeah,
film.
they played off of each other.
Oh, boy, howdy. Boy, howdy they play off each other. Zing.
So, this is a very...
Those dames got moxie. I'm sorry, go on.
No. You're okay. So this
We
is...
warned the audience this would happen.
Yeah. So this is a very interesting film, and in all honesty, this is the kind of film that would be set up for me to not like.
I was surprised.
I know, and I was going to say, I actually quite enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Mostly because I feel like this film delivers on the premise that it sets up. And a lot of times I feel like films don't land for me because they go off in a different direction and they want to tell a different story, which is totally fine because films do not have to be made for what I want to see.
Right.
But at the same time, this is a film that says, we're going to poison everybody with LSD and we're going to show you what happens. And I'm just like, sure, are you actually going to? And it's like, yeah.
It doesn't have loftier ambitions than its sales pitch, so to speak.
No,
which
but
I think is actually
But at the
positive.
same time, fucked up shit happens in this film and it delivers on that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it feels like this actually is happening.
Yeah. No,
Like
absolutely.
it's not like, oh, look at this fantastical lights. It's
It never
like, no.
feels exaggerated, which is weird because some of the worst shit imaginable does occur.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that being said, we went and I think I suggested this knowing that I had seen a post that you had about being interested in Gaspar Noé and specifically in this film.
Yeah.
But also I had kind of, it's funny because this is one of the first films that I read the plot line, but also the poster drew me into this. And it was the specific blocking of the poster. And I will say that going back and looking at it, and this is definitely one of the best posters I think that's been made, specifically because not just the look, but also the end game of this poster, which is fantastic, is you see not every single character that's in this film, but a good majority of them in the poster. And every single shot of that character that is in the poster is the last frame that we see of them in the film, and it's pretty fucking fantastic.
Oh, I think I've seen a
know.
different poster then.
Okay,
Are you talking about? Well, we'll talk about that after.
that's fine.
Specifically,
but
interesting.
it is pretty awesome
Yeah,
that's how it
great.
ends up. This film, though, is it okay if I just kind of start?
Oh yeah, go.
Just kind of blabbing here.
Do it.
This film, actually, the best part of it happens before the LSD happens. This film has a fucking awesome dance number at the very beginning, and it is just fantastic. And I'm not necessarily saying that because of the actual dancing, although I think that is quite good, but just the action and the blocking that had to happen, and not because I've made films before, but I've watched lots of them, and I do know about, the difficulties of having cameras come in and out of scenes. The fact that this happens in a scene that continuously goes on for about 11 minutes is absolutely fucking phenomenal. The fact that the camera is a character through this that moves in and out of all these different, just extremely elaborate dance numbers happening, and turns and tilts and does complete 360s, and the type of blocking that had to happen to have this work out the way it did, it was filmmaking mastery, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And this is before the main pull to get you to watch the film
Right.
happens. But I think it does a fabulous job in this beginning part showing the actual reasoning for why these people were here and the goal for why they wanted to get together with these specific people. And then you see the opposite, just terrible horribleness happen when the realization comes in that they've all been poisoned with LSD. That was awesome. The opening sort of, not scene, but the opening sort of testimonials that happen on old videotape is probably will be best noted on a rewatch because they kind of made no sense when you're watching it for the first time. So I'll save all my opinions for the most action of the film, which is everything that happens after the realization that they've been poisoned and there's really no coming back from this. But I will say this film sets up this premise and it fucking delivers. And there is really the cinematography here is freaking brilliant. The blocking through the different scenes and the decision to have a sort of L-shaped set where you're going from the one main room around a hallway into another hallway and then coming back and forth and having the same trip around the same area also was just fantastic. And the sheer amount of characters here is honestly just incredible that it flows as well as it does. And obviously characters are more important than others, but we also see just this great flow between all these characters happen, even though when shit goes bad, it goes bad really fast for a lot of people. But this is just a really very interesting film and a really well-made film, I thought. And just a wonderful work by Gaspar Noé. And I was just blown away by how well put together this was for such a fucking crazy nightmare fest.
I'd agree. I was super excited to see this because I had never actually sat down to watch a Gaspar Noé film, so I was excited the fact that the first time I was going to experience his kind of brand of shock is in a theater where I couldn't escape. But, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you can put on Irreversible now at home, but you can pause it if it gets to be too much, or even if you're just, quote-unquote, not in the mood. You're going to, if I sit down in something in the theater, it doesn't matter if I'm no longer in the mood. I'm going to watch it to the credits. And at home, you just don't get that kind of commitment, even when it's you who's making the decision. Mm-hmm. So I was pretty blown away because I'd always read a lot about him, so I kind of knew what to expect from the POV shaky cam to the gauche kind of intertitles to the pretentiousness of... And he did it in this film, of rolling the end credits in the beginning instead of having any at the end.
Yeah, I really actually thought that worked okay here, although he did also do the title sequence in the middle of the film, which I thought was stupid.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. He's a French... He's inspired by the French New Wave, but certainly more of a progenitor of the French New Extremity. So he's kind of... This definitely felt like him aping Godard.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a very Godardian idea to put the credits in the middle.
Yes, and so that is kind of interesting. I'll say this. So I had kind of told Alex that the credit scene in the beginning, like rolling your end credits in reverse, like he did that for Irreversible, and it makes, and now I've seen that movie, even though I hadn't at the time, and that makes perfect sense because that film is literally told in reverse. So, just as a thematic and stylistic, wankery, how are you going to argue with that?
Yeah, I mean, thematically, it's right in there.
Yeah. In this movie, there's no thematic reason, in my opinion, to do it. However, I kind of vocalize why I thought it actually worked in this, which is that when this movie ends, you want to walk out of a theater. As much as any movie you see, there's always that kind of well, I'm just going to sit here while the credits roll. I'm kind of glad I was not afforded that opportunity because I was done with it. And I say that as someone who enjoyed it, or I should say enjoyed the craft and technical filmmaking here. But there is something very apropos about the fact that by the time the final shot rolls around, we then are treated to the A24 logo, and that's it. It is time to go. So as a theatrical exhibition, I thought that was a pretty genius move, so to speak.
I have to say, I do kind of miss. I think it was around 1969, 70. You started seeing longer credits where they were crediting everybody, not just the main cast, and they were actually crediting the crew. There is something about those movies where it would just end, and it would be like.
Well, the thing is, they did it at the
where
beginning.
It's bam. It's like, da-da-da, literally the end, and you're like...
Wow.
So you talk about you going back to like the good old days where they had someone just literally holding cards that said the credits.
Well,
yes, there was
that's
that
the
too.
thing. It's not so much that we're changing who we give credit to. Obviously, we are giving more credit, but in general, you used to put that in the beginning because people were still on board for the movie, whereas they knew that people didn't want to sit through it after a movie ended, which we're kind of still in that boat, even though we still do that today.
True.
But as a film, though, I thought this was just pretty great. Now that I've seen two of his works, I wouldn't quite put it on the thematic wavelength of something like Irreversible, which is just as shocking, but also I feel like has genuine characters in it, because it's only about 3 people, if not only really 2, in that movie. But for what this movie does, it's kind of stupendous that it works, and it works for 100 minutes. It's an ensemble piece that, as you described, Alex, sprawls across about 20 or so players, and while obviously you don't get to know them as people, you do get to wallow in their arcs, and that's pretty amazing that it works as well as it does. Everybody has these kind of introductions in the vignette opening where everybody's being interviewed, and as you call the testimonials, because that's what it is, like they're giving these kind of sound bites, and even if you know it's going to be important, it's too hard to catalog the first time you watch this movie, because you're meeting 20 or so players, and to really, so a rewatch will certainly help that. But even beyond that opening, just past the opening dance sequence, you're also treated to a good 10 to 15 minutes of what I would call the downtime before the LSD starts even kicking in, where everybody is just talking to one another. And what I think is
that's a great sequence.
That is. And what I love about that sequence is that compared to the entire rest of the film, the camera is stationary, and it is just cutting from conversation to conversation.
You also get a second dance sequence that you actually thought was fantastic.
I did, where everybody keeps joining. It almost reminds you of like a wedding dance sequence where like some stupid song starts playing, and then like everybody who's on the dance floor and not at the bar just fucking eats up, and they're calling Uncle John to get in the middle, even though Uncle John doesn't want to, whatever. But everybody gets their moment to shine as they keep interchanging the dancers. And most of it, or if not the entire thing, is shot from an aerial point of view. And as I said to Alex, like, there are moves that you can see on dance like competition shows or at a performance where it looks technically crazy and proficient, but also they are dancing sometimes when they get onto the floor on a horizontal axis that we do not get to truly see. Wow. And I thought it was interesting that because Gaspar Noé puts the camera up there, that transforms.
Totally different perspective.
And you get to see the artistry and the mastery and whatnot. So I thought that entire sequence was great.
So, if we're cool jumping into the LSD portion of this film, which is the main portion of what we're seeing on screen, I guess the first thing I'll mention before we get to that really quickly, since you already mentioned the sort of period where they are drinking the sangria and it is doing its wonders on them, we get some extraordinarily horrible masculine conversations happening between the gentlemen in this crew.
The worst kind of toxic masculinity.
Oh my goodness!
And only focused on the subject of sex.
And only focused on people saying repeatedly, "Well, she said she does it, but I know she really wants it."
Yeah.
And God.
Yeah. Especially two individuals in particular will not
talking
stop
about how they want it. They want anal sex, and they want and you just have to fucking do it.
Yes.
Oh,
the phrase "stick it in" is said maybe a dozen times at least, probably more
followed by
that.
Laughter.
Yes.
And that's
The scary part about that is just that the way we're viewing it and whatnot, like that is actually the kind of conversation that happen when two horrible people get off on their own corner of the party, and that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've definitely been privy to conversations. I mean, even just,
I was going to say been party too.
I've been part of that. No, I mean,
I know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I know what I instigated the
high
conversation.
fives all around.
Oh yeah, We were like, yeah. No, but I definitely have been, I mean, certainly like cases where, you're at a bar and you go into a washroom and you start hearing guys, and you're like, you guys
This
are
felt
the
like the washroom
sleaziest
conversations were happening on the dance floor, and almost everybody was, now, some people were having it in lesser, shall we say, I don't know, intensity.
Graphic.
But like everybody was having those kind of conversations, and it just keeps cross-cutting between them.
I had a couple quick questions. Is this film in English?
No, it's a French
Yeah.
language
Okay.
film, and a couple characters speak English.
Okay.
So that's like maybe 10% of the film.
Yeah, because I believe up to this time they've all been French.
They have,
or his first two films, just really fast, deal really extensively with toxic masculinity, and that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of one of his long-term projects, I think,
Well,
as a
and
filmmaker.
as someone as I've now just seen Irreversible, what's notable about that film is the fact that everybody calls it the rape film and whatnot, and yet what that movie is more about is the boyfriend who may have inadvertently caused it, and then after the act, the rage he feels and the entitlement he has in correcting that mistake, so to speak, and the revenge he wants. And it's like, I think it's actually pointed, but that movie is not about the Monica Bellucci's character, and I also think that's the point, which is that how males somehow seep into every aspect of a woman's journey, whether they are the cause or they're the quote-unquote protector and the avenger, and it's really fucking awful.
It's always about them. It's like, maybe it's not about you, dude.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, the revenge thing, and that theme of a guy feeling like in order to protect his manhood and protect his girl's honor, that's not something you see in a lot of movies, and that was pretty brave. There's only one other movie I've seen, and it was an American indie movie called Desolation Angels, which was basically this guy gets obsessed with somebody anonymously who raped his girlfriend, and I don't even remember if it was something well before they started going out, but it really transforms him. I mean, not for the better. You know? So it kind of warps him, I guess you would say.
So, getting into the LSD portion of this film, there are a few images that I will always probably remember from this film. Sofia Boutella, when she is going through just a cascade of different emotions, when she's pleasuring herself, then she feels trapped in her fishnet stockings as she cannot get out. Then she's walking down while escaping that, and then she slides against the wall almost like an exorcism is happening and starts having sex with the wall.
Well, and I think it's very telling that when we watch the video vignettes of the testimonials, next to the TV there are VHS, and you can see the side panels of them and what movies they are, and one of them is Andrew Bajolski's Possession, which her performance reminded me of Isabel and Johnny's performance in the subway of that film.
Wow.
And I would, absolutely see that.
Other films noted in that little tower of great movies is Suspiria, Argento's, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom.
Is that actually...
Yep. Lucio Fulci's Zombie.
Oh, yeah.
And a few others.
And then there were also texts there as well.
There was, and I couldn't quite read those because they were slightly smaller.
Yeah.
Would have spines, but yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So, getting to the part of this film, which is probably... maybe aside from the kind of ending message of this, probably the most I don't know what the best word is, surprising, and it I don't want to say that it's cheating, but it kind of is. But when you get children involved anytime, you're just playing with fire, and this film does it, and it's actually probably the best way on both accounts, where you could actually do it and have it not
it has
be
its
distasteful.
cake and eats it.
It does, and it's actually
and then it shits it out.
It's actually not real. I mean, it is distasteful, but it's not like. So this is really probably the most tasteful way you could do something like what they do in this film, and still have it be just fucking awful.
Oh yeah.
But the idea that there is a child at this event that's going on, that is one of the main people who's running it. It's her child, and the fact that we see in the background that he starts drinking the sangria. So
I love
he
that
it
takes about 40 minutes before the camera actually goes up to him to show. But he's So basically, the mother put him to bed before the party started, as if Noé is really trying to goad you into thinking that all is okay. And then in the background of the party scene, when everybody's really drinking and is starting to get a little whatever, you can see him walk down the stairs, and I'm talking in the background, not just like pointedly. That's the focus.
Someone who's a very smart foreign filmmaker is now like, look, there he is.
Yes, and he walks down the stairs, kind of chills for a second, sees the sangria, which he was told earlier that he's not allowed to drink, and he's a fucking child, so of course he's going to. And then he starts drinking it for a good couple of minutes before anyone notices.
The opening scene when she puts him to bed, by the way, is actually probably one of the more heartbreaking scenes of the film in retrospect.
Yeah.
Because it is a very loving scene and a very happy scene, although it is then followed up by people talking about having abortions.
True.
Which is... and then she talks about how that was a mistake, her having a child after. Oh, yeah, that's quite a reach around right there.
Yeah. So for anyone listening at home, if you are interested because you don't want to watch the movie, which is understandable, the culmination of that storyline is that after everybody's been drugged, including the mother, and she finds that the kid is drinking.
And by the way, the two people who have not been drugged. Everyone wants to kill them.
Yes, and they suffer a horrible fate.
Yes,
because no one else can believe that because they didn't drink, that they had nothing to do with it, and they both suffer horrible, horrible fates because of that.
Horrible, like Theon Greyjoy. Horrible. I mean, Game of Thrones.
Close enough.
The second person is the other child involved in this.
Oh Lord.
Yes,
there's two children. Sorry.
Kind of.
But you know where I was going with it, right, Nick?
Yeah.
The first one is completely just sent away and thrown out in the snow, and the only other time we see him is seeing him frozen to death.
Which is actually the first scene of the entire film. No?
It's the other one who freezes to death.
Oh.
She leaves to try to escape because she believes she's escaping, and then we see her death.
I get it. Never mind.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Anyways, but that's fine.
But yeah.
The idea, just really fast, the idea was that the LSD was not permanent, right? It was just, I mean, like,
but
they could have written it out if they had just...
but they were under the influence.
And
the point is, it's one bad night type thing.
And the problem is, and the one of the most interesting parts of this film is that it is all these people who all have succumbed to this at the exact same time, and there is no escape.
And we see how they are before they're affected, and they're not the greatest people in the world anyway. So,
and they're all basically, I mean, for lack of a better word, they're locked in. You know, like the locked in episode of a sitcom.
Yeah. No, it all takes place in that night and everything.
Very nice.
So the plot line with the child then becomes this, which is that the mother decides that because she's high and because the kid's obviously going to be fucked up, the only good way to deal with this is to lock him in the only room that she can find that she can lock him in.
Which is where all the...
which is the electrical room.
Equipment is.
So throughout the whole movie, after she does that, and of course he's crying, and he also starts to scream,
which you hear over and over again,
constantly throughout the entire movie.
That is one of the best sound editing parts of this film. Is when people like walk away from it, you can kind of hear him, but then they walk towards him and it gets louder, and it just is always
He's never not doing that. And what's great too is that the kid is also shouting lines that make you understand that he is also then succumbing to LSD because he starts to shout crazy things like the monsters are here and whatnot. And here's the thing.
Holy shit.
The greatest moment in this entire movie for me is the presumed death of the child. Because at a certain point...
sick man.
No. I think I know what you're going to say, and it's because the assumption of the other people then that he's dead. Is that what you're going for?
I mean, that's part of it, but actually I was just saying the way it plays out.
And because you like seeing dead children.
No, you never actually see it. So here's...
And he doesn't die, too.
He doesn't. Now, we don't know that at the time, but I'm talking about the sequence in which everybody is dancing and they're fucked up because this is so crazy, whatever. And a lot of shit has gone down at this point.
This is the second dance sequence?
The power goes out. And then everybody puts it together what that means, and some of them literally just start screaming, Tito's fried, because that's the name of the child. So the idea that this is just a hilarious joke to them, and that their party should still continue.
But we do end this film by finding out that he's still alive.
True.
But the mother because of all her guilt, has committed suicide.
Yes, because she was under the influence. So while I agree that I actually fucking love that ending, for me, it's the nonchalant, casual camaraderie of everyone just reveling in this child's death. Now, the fact that he's okay, like, I don't think that cheapens it at all.
No, not
I
at all,
just
yeah.
absolutely love that in media rays of everyone just kind of throwing it out like a punchline. Like, this is just another shitty thing that happened on this night, and no one's to blame, and ha 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 ha.
Boy, what a Monday. You know?
So the other person who did not drink is a female who we find out she did not drink because she's pregnant.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so here's an interesting twist, though, because one of the other people who is here comes in, and her friend, she's good friends, it seems, with Selva.
Mm-hmm.
For the most
Selva
part,
seems
the main
like a
character.
peacemaker between all, in the sense that everyone either wants to fuck her or be her.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So she's Lady Gaga,
So
in my opinion.
might not be wrong. So, anyways, she is in there trying to console her and ask her, what's wrong? Are you sick too? Well, no, I'm not sick. I'm pregnant. I haven't had anything to drink. So another character comes in and then starts to say, wait a minute, we killed the wrong person. You're the one who actually poisoned us because you aren't drinking. So the fact that it turns around to where this girl, the one who is pregnant, has just confided in Selva that she is pregnant, and she asks her to not tell anybody. Selva thinks the only way to turn the situation around is to tell her, oh no, she's pregnant. This girl then says, oh, well then you didn't poison us. You lied to me. Fuck you, bitch. And she knees her in the stomach.
Yes.
Well, that makes no sense. But then again, when you're
Well,
Exactly. And yes, and like that's
And
maybe only the second worst thing that happens to her.
No, but this all happens in like a 4-second range. Like it really happens fast, and there's no way to comprehend it watching in real time.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean.
So then we see what happens after this.
Yeah, which is her. Everyone ganging up on her, and then her taking that matter into her own hand. And I think, for me at least, this is the way I read it, basically saying, like, she doesn't want any baby to be associated with this hellish night, so she also will make sure that, either she'll die or the baby will die. Because first she just starts beating her stomach up, before she even goes to herself.
Then we have a creep-ass groupthink moment where people are chanting, kill yourself, and shit like that.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Yeah. Actually, fucking fantastic actual physical effects, which can still be great. But she starts to cut herself, and the fact that there is just like a small slit in her arm, and then you just slowly see the blood start to trickle down, that was fabulous.
I agree.
I sound like a terrible person.
But it made it that much more like uncomfortable to watch, because I felt like then that was happening to me because it looked realistic and not just like a slasher film. There's so many things we haven't even touched on, which we don't even need to touch on. But like, somebody gets their hair set on fire in one of the greatest moments in the movie, in my opinion. People obviously hook up. People get rejected and wanting to hook up. Like, this runs the gamut of
people. Well, towards the end, when the shit has fucking hit the fan,
it turns into an actual bacchanalia,
and people start dancing so crazily and erratically that they start breaking their bones.
Yes.
And it's not like we see people like
It's a
falling
great
over.
payoff.
We don't see people like falling over necessarily in this, but you hear it happening. It's the sound cues.
And
that,
for me, it was a great payoff because I'm still convinced it only really happens to one character in particular.
We hear bones cracking like 6 or 7 times.
And I guess for me, I just thought that the sound effect of that was coming from him, no matter who we were looking at.
be.
I guess I'm just wanking that just because of the fact that I thought that was a great payoff to his storyline, which is actually there's one dude who's really not involved with any. I mean, he drinks the sangria, whatever, but he's only ever seen in the background still dancing the entire time.
Wow.
So by the time it gets to the end, I thought that was his payoff, which is that he's so locked into his dancing that he's completely breaking down his whole body.
And we can
Everybody else is mostly fucking at that point, besides him.
Pretty much, yeah. We can get to our final ratings on this because we don't need to spend. This is a film
I just wanted to put this out there.
This is a film that
this
people
movie exists.
should if they're interested and can stomach what this film's content has.
I will say,
should watch it. I think.
Now I've seen 2 of his films, and his most notable, or I should say notorious, I think this is slightly easier to stomach than some of his other stuff. Maybe not easier than something like Love, which is just pornographic and not actually like violence for the most part. But as much as Irreversible only has 10 minutes of brutality and this has 100 minutes of it, the brutality in here is slightly more imaginative and just kind of crazy instead of I don't know, gut punching. Except when it is, literally.
Yeah. And so, I will say, we missed all kinds of things in terms of this film. There's an incest storyline happening between brother and sister where he gets to consummate that relationship towards the end, finally. There is a racism Nazi storyline happening in the background.
There's a woman who will not, we don't know exactly, but explicitly there's something on her skin that she works the entire movie to try to get off, right? Yeah.
And then there is this little guy who just really wants to have sex with some other man.
Yeah.
And he finds a nice big man to have sex with.
Hey, that was Daddy. Daddy's one of the only pure people in this movie.
It's actually probably true.
I had a couple... Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
No, I was going to... And one thing I will say before we and then, Dan, we can...
I just had a couple questions.
No, for sure. One of the things that I really like about this film is... when we were getting towards the end, I was more than fine with there never being an answer to how the poisoning happened. But the fact that we get in the very last frame of this film clarity on exactly how it happened, and it just happened to be one of the characters and they just wanted to have a good time with everybody.
And in my opinion, actually, that character makes the most sense as far as how they kept to themselves in the background. Yeah, I thought that was actually pretty great. I didn't need the answer, and yet it fit perfectly.
But one thing I will say about that, and this is a small discussion we had after viewing the film, as we have the police arrive at the end and get a glimpse of all this, and the guffawing, like, holy fuck, of everything that's happened. What's the legal culprit? Like, can she go to jail? People died because of this.
Yeah, I mean,
in this reckless endangerment. Perhaps?
I was gonna say, I told Alex that for me it was like everybody's culpable on different levels. So like she, at the very least, would be, I would say, some kind of conspirator or to commit. What you just said, reckless, but then everybody else is kind of involuntary manslaughter,
right?
Because like while they may not have known what they were doing, if you held the knife, you led to. This kind of shit. So
sure,
yeah. So that is
it's interesting.
Yeah, it is, and also too the ending frames of this film has the room completely turned upside down, and you're watching all the ending dancing happening, and then you're seeing the police walk towards you, like Inception wise, completely upside down, which is probably a little
on the nose.
But at the same time, I thought it looked good.
I was going to say, it looked phenomenal.
I thought the cinematography of this one was actually fucking great.
What's great about that ending is that even if it's on the nose, it works because it's upsetting that the moment in which respite is found, we're still not on normal ground. Like that should be the moment, even if it's horrific, where the denouement is the
cavalry comes.
Yeah,
you're like,
it's still not. It's still unsettling because we're not allowed to ground ourselves in it.
I will say, the way we find out about the character who has put LSD in. I guess there's probably no better way to clue the audience in that she was the one who did it, but at the same time. It's probably not good if the police come and question her, and literally in her bag is a book that says "How to Have Fun with LSD" or something like that.
That was pretty great.
Yeah. So
that's funny.
So Dan, but before we get to our ratings, you had a couple questions.
Yeah, a couple quick ones. You mentioned it's an ensemble piece, which I love ensemble pieces, and I definitely love ones, especially ones with a large group of characters that have largely the same amount of screen time. I mean, some might get a little more. Yep. I was curious, is this like? Would you guys compare this at all to like some like Robert Altman stuff,
no.
like a Nashville?
I figured that's exactly what you were going to go for.
Right.
I guess I would in a microscopic sense.
What about Gaspar Well, maybe not that one. No, never mind.
Well, no, but I would say those are similar in that. In that you don't get to know these people. They only live and die by what they did that night.
Sure.
It's not like Gosford Park, where even if that's a weekend thing, you still kind of have scripted characters. I mean, Gaspar Noé famously lets his characters improvise, and that was certainly the case here. So I would say say it's not in that same. It's the same, maybe. Call sheet, which is that you have this many people showing up, but they're way more connected. Even if they are separate individuals, they're way more connected by the shit that's going down than something like an Altman film, which I would say painstakingly keeps them divided,
right.
even if they're in the same geographical space.
Absolutely. I think
So
that's a
no,
big part
I would say it's not quite like that. It's more akin to a. I don't know. I haven't seen it quite on this level before. It was pretty great in that sense. So I would say not quite.
Okay, I was just curious.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely going to see this film.
I would.
And I was going to say, you guys were talking about the conversations that they're having before the LSD kicks in. Mm-hmm. Have either of you guys seen Vanya on 42nd Street?
Yes.
You have.
Yes.
It's interesting. It's a play, right?
Actually, I would say whatever you're about to say. Unlike the Robert Altman question, my answer, I'm guessing, is yes to this question. So continue.
Well, basically, at the beginning of this, it's a group of actors. They walk in. They're wearing street clothes. It's in New York, and they come in. And some of the actors are like people you'd recognize, like Julianne Moore or the gal who was the kidnapped victim in Silence of the Lambs. She's in it. Wallace Shawn, a few other people. And they walk in, and they're like getting food, and they're chatting. It's just very like light and everything. And like. They're talking, and then somewhere almost imperceptibly the play starts because the actors are so good, and because they're not wearing costumes.
That's one of my favorite moments in cinema.
It's so freaking good.
Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely, and it's so good because it's like it. I don't know. I guess I already said it.
No, but it mirrors, or not mirror, it blurs the line between when. And I will say, just you bringing that up, while obviously you don't get the exact same vibe here,
sure.
There is a similar moment in which there isn't a moment in which, quote unquote, the light goes on, the LSD is hit. You could, I think, ambiguously make the argument that the LSD hit at different times depending on who you are as a film viewer. Like, sure. I could see some people saying that maybe the LSD hit well before they were having those conversations about sticking it in, and that's why they acted the way they did. Right. I'm not saying that that's my reading, but I mean the film says it starts. There's really a starting gun, and it's actually when they start drinking it.
Well, no,
I
think the film says the true kick in for when is a clear divide, and that is when the character who actually poisoned everybody just starts peeing on the floor.
Yeah, that is true, I guess, but that's a rewatch type thing as far as, like, well, not a rewatch thing, but I feel like a rewatch enhances that moment.
Agreed.
To, like, obviously,
but for me, that was the separation from conversations to actual physical action happening.
I could see that.
Oh, wait, sure. What's happening? Wait a minute, I don't feel right. Oh,
but
fuck.
That is true in the sense that, okay, I would agree it's just on a narrative level. That's probably what this signpost is. However, it's not like that's how drugs work, where everybody then kicks into having.
But that's
drugs.
how films work.
But
so
yeah, I'd agree with that in the sense that you could still argue though that LSD may have kicked in for
absolutely.
So okay,
sure.
So in that sense, it kind of does have echoes of that of the film Vanya on 42nd Street. So.
Interesting. I was just curious.
Yeah.
My favorite movie by Noé is Noé. How are you saying? Yeah,
I think so.
Is Enter the Void, and
I still want to watch that.
I think it's a stone masterpiece. I really regret that I never watched in the theater.
I haven't.
Well, I was just going to say, speaking of crazy credits, I believe it does all its credits in like 15 seconds, and it's like. And the other,
and he does one of those in this movie too. When he does all the dancers' names, they all have their own funny logos.
Oh, awesome! Yeah. I love that shit.
At least some of them do.
I dig all that graphic, like excess, But something Alex said about how the camera is like a character where it's weaving through. In Enter the Void, the camera literally is the character. It's somebody's soul. And I remember I talked to Toussaint about this one time, and he didn't much care for the movie, but I think he got a different thing from it than I did. But I think it's an absolute masterpiece. I mean, it's definitely not for everybody. I mean, the way it's lit, the way it's shot, if you're not up for it, you might feel a little car sick, or you might be like, this is just totally indulgent, I'm not into it. But it's so brilliant. And, like, if he only did that movie and nothing else, I think he would still be like, wow, that was a masterful film by a master, I haven't seen Love, but I don't know. I'm not as interested, I guess.
Yeah. I watched the first half hour the other day.
Oh, okay.
And, it was okay. I'll probably finish it, but I definitely don't feel the need to. So.
Sure.
All right, final ratings.
Final ratings. I'm going to go with 3.5 out of 5 here. I thought this was a really, really well put together film. Even if it's not my kind of movie, it definitely won me over. And I'm interested to see some of his other works. I think I'm going to stomach my way through Irreversible at some point.
I think you should.
Yeah.
Especially because I will just downplay it and say that 10-minute scene is awful, but it's also a 10-minute scene out of the entire rest of the movie.
Yeah. And I am interested, especially from what Toussaint has previously said and what Dan just said for Into the Void. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see his other works. And this is somebody knowing what kind of film they want to make and playing in that sandbox. And it was very well done and has a lot of moments in here that are great for different reasons. So I think it's a very interesting film and a film that I actually think is quite good. So 3.5 out of 5 for me.
I'd give it the same rating.
Yay.
I had a lot of fun with it, if that's the right word. I don't know. But just as a technical craft, it was phenomenal in that regard. I thought managing all these different characters in these little mini arcs was honestly
work of brilliance.
Yeah, you have to know what you're doing in order to actually pull it off, and I think he absolutely did. And I thought this was a great kind of primer and introduction to Gaspar Noé. Like it was my first Gaspar Noé film. However, even just knowing what I know about his other films, I still think I would start somebody here because I think there's a reason why A24 picked it up, which is that it does balance that line between what people know about Gaspar Noé, but also not giving somebody more than they can chew if they're knowingly sitting down for a Gaspar Noé film. It's not like, obviously, it's not shocking or whatever, but I think a lot of the things like the child dying, or does it, whatever, but happens off screen, and that's kind of where a lot of the terror of this film comes. It's more in what they think they're seeing versus what you're actually seeing. Having said that, there's still a lot of disgusting, brutal violence, so certainly don't go see it if it's not something that sounds like it's up your alley.
Well put.
Yeah, 3.5 out of 5 for me.
Good stuff. Well, this was a fun little bonus. Thank you very much, Dan, for sitting in with us and asking some great questions.
I enjoyed it. Definitely looking forward to seeing it.
Good stuff. From myself and Nick, thank you very much for catching up with us here on this bonus episode, and we'll see you next time.
Woohoo!
Yay.